Hi friends, Eric here with Really Clean Water Technologies. I want to share with you a couple of websites to talk about what you're looking for your whole house. If you're looking for a water softener, the first question people always ask is how big is it, where's it going to go, and how much does it cost? A much better question to ask is, will that water system remove any chemicals from my water, and are there any specific chemicals in my water that I should be concerned with? So that's what we're going to talk about today. Great website for you here is called environmentalworkinggroup.org, and it's ewg.org/tapwater. And this website has a list of every water supply in the United States. You just put in your zip code. So for this example, we're going to say Nipomo, California, 93444. I'm going to hit go. And so we find, okay, this is our water utility. And what they're going to say is, in this particular city, there are 16 contaminants in the water that exceed the Environmental Working Group's health guidelines. So what does that mean? It means if you called the city and said, is my water safe? They're going to say, well, it's perfectly legal, meaning it meets the federal and state standards. But if you said, is the water really safe? It's like, well, if you're concerned about your water quality, you should probably talk to your physician. So what we're looking at here is the results of the water test based on a toxicologist study that says, okay, if we're going to look at the most recent health studies, what's going to be effective for a safe level of this stuff in your drinking water. So the first thing we talk about here is arsenic, and these are just listed alphabetically. So arsenic, you can have as much as 10 parts per billion in the water. The goal for arsenic is always 0. The EWG says a healthy guideline for arsenic would be 0.004 parts per billion, and this particular city here sits at 5.24. So that's where they come up with this 1,310 times more arsenic in your water than you would like to have, because the goal is to protect your health, and we say the perfect goal would be 0. As we're looking at these disinfection byproducts, as the city adds chemicals to the water to kill bacteria, that creates side effect chemicals, which we call disinfection byproducts. And these byproducts aren't something we want to be drinking, but then the question becomes, do we want to even bathe in them? So for certain things like hexavalent chromium, that's one of these chemicals that, if you remember that movie Erin Brockovich, that's the chemical they talked about in Erin Brockovich. Here we are 25 plus years later. There still is no legal limit at a federal level on this contaminant for our drinking water. So it makes you wonder. Something like chloroform. Chloroform is great for kidnapping people. Remember that from the movies. But it's a volatile organic compound, so that means when you're in the shower and that water is hot and it's creating steam, you're breathing in that steam, which is also breathing in some of that chloroform. So if you like the idea of not breathing in all these things when we're taking a shower, the trick is we simply filter the water for the entire house. So we're going to talk about some different options as far as how you can treat the water for your home. First thing we're going to talk about is just kind of having a references to determine, does your water even need elaborate treatment or filtration? And the answer is, in most cases, it really does. We don't know exactly what's in our water. This is going to give us a really good idea of what's in our water. But beyond that, you have to realize they're only testing for 106 contaminants in these drinking water tests. We live in a country where there's 85,000 registered chemicals for sale every single day. We're only regulating 0.00001% of the things that could potentially be in our drinking water. So as we're going down here, there's quite a few things here, and everybody's water reports can be a little bit different. Nitrates generally come from fertilizers or waste of some sort. And the thing we're going to talk about at the bottom here is total trihalomethanes. So these are a group of chemicals the EPA expects to find in our water every time they chlorinate it. And unfortunately, this is one of these chemicals that actually absorbs into our skin. So we know about dermal absorption because if we go to a doctor and they want to give us a medication, a lot of times now they'll give us a patch or some sort of a cream to put on our skin. 20 years ago, that wasn't very common. So everything with our drinking water regulation is based on ingestion, but it doesn't take into account also the fact that we absorb some of this stuff into our skin. So if you were to do a blood sample before and after you take a shower, you will find that trihalomethanes can make it through your skin and into your bloodstream. So that gives us a question about, well, what do we want to be bathing in? So the nice thing about the Environmental Working Group is they're going to give you a lot of information as far as what's in the water, but then they're also going to give you some guidelines here as to how to treat that. So if we said, let's start with the very top contaminant here, which is arsenic. Arsenic is going to be something we clearly don't want in our water. And if we scroll down here, we can look right here and we can say, well, arsenic is actually not removed by activated carbon. So that means your refrigerator filter, that means your Brita pitcher, your Pure filter, any of these things actually do not remove arsenic, but reverse osmosis does. And so that's really helpful for people that are wanting a drinking water solution. That tells us that reverse osmosis is in fact a very effective method for removing arsenic from our drinking water. Now this last one here, I don't necessarily agree with them on because it's not specific enough. So they're saying that ion exchange will remove arsenic. Now the question is, what is ion exchange? If we're talking about ion exchange, most people have heard that ion exchange means some sort of a water softener. Now, water softener is an ion exchange system, but it's a cation exchange system. Now, cation exchange system will actually not remove any arsenic from the water, but an anion system will. So that's where it gets a little bit confusing, where they're not specifying what type of a ion exchange system will remove arsenic, but they are clearly stating, an activated carbon filter and reverse osmosis. Those are very good descriptions for those technologies, but unfortunately they're just not clear enough with this ion exchange, and I think that confuses a lot of people. So as we're looking at, same thing with hexavalent chromium. Can ion exchange take care of that? Possibly, but again, not necessarily as effective as reverse osmosis. And if we're talking about nitrates down here, again, we're talking about anion exchange resin, not cation resin. So there's a little bit here that isn't as perfectly well suited for using it as its sole answers to all these questions. But most people are going to eventually work with a local water treatment dealer to recommend a system, install it for them, maintain it, service it, and provide a good, valuable service, for your home and your family. But to kind of give you an idea of what we're looking at here, we're looking at water softener, because that's generally where people are starting here. Is you've got a hard water problem, you want to protect the pipes, you want the dishes to not look terrible, you don't want to hear the cleaning lady crying in the middle of the night. So obviously some sort of a softener is going to do the trick. And if I click this features button, we can see inside of a water softener, it's full of these resin beads, and the resin beads are just going to simply hold on to all the calcium that's coming through there, and it's then going to use a salt solution to backwash this whole thing, knock all the calcium off the resin and down the drain. So this is what we call a self-regenerating water softener, and it's using salt. Now the only problem with a water softener is that it doesn't do anything to address the chemicals in the water. So if we're looking at something that can address the chemicals, well, you can put in filters, for your whole house. But let's say a filter for the whole house, granted it's going to do a really good job of filtering out, chemicals and all that kind of stuff, as we would want to not be bathing in them. The problem with this filter is that it doesn't soften the water. So now we have two systems, one that's filtering the water and then one that's softening the water. So the idea here is if we can simply combine these into a system that has been engineered to do both of these jobs, to filter the water and soften the water, then you'll find a product called the WaterMax. So whereas every other water system is a single compartment tank, typically have a 10-year warranty, this actually has a 25-year manufacturer's warranty, which is amazing. It's an outside cabinet warranty as well as a inside the cabinet warranty. But here's how it works. First thing is the water passes through here, it hits this top layer, and this top layer is going to be filled with a media called KDF. KDF is a combination of zinc and copper. As it passes through this media, it immediately neutralizes the chlorine on contact. It doesn't have to be replaced. It is a self-cleaning chlorine filter. And then it hits the ultrafill. So ultrafill is going to deal with any sand, sediment, silt in the water. So as we have city water, that water came from somewhere that probably still had a little bit of sand come through it. And if not, it will always come through when, let's say, a pipe breaks and they have to do a repair. Then you're going to see, a good amount of sand or silt, sediment, stuff coming through the water that isn't water. So the idea is that this actually is filtering out physically everything larger than 20 microns so that it doesn't make it into the water system. But remember, the first step here is we filtered out the free chlorine by 95% immediately. In the second compartment here, we have coconut shell granular activated carbon. So carbon is really great at absorbing chemicals. It's what you find in, again, this pitcher filter. That's full of carbon. Generally, at least 2 of the filters on reverse osmosis are also carbon. Carbon works great for removing organic chemicals, but it works by adsorption. So at some point that carbon is going to run out of capacity. You then have to replace that carbon. So the beauty of this design here is instead of having to replace a carbon filter, we're replacing this carbon out of this media bed here. We're actually extending the life of that carbon by removing that chlorine before it hits the carbon. Now that carbon can last much, much longer. In a Hague WaterMax, the carbon is actually guaranteed for 25 years because of their design here, and they carry quite a few patents on this product. There's nothing else like it in the industry. So it filters out the chlorine, which a softener doesn't do, filters out the chemicals, which a softener doesn't do. Last compartment is a water softener. Now the water softener that's in a Hague WaterMax is actually much more efficient than the water softener that's in a HydroClean 3 or really any other water softener because we're using a fine mesh resin. There's more of these beads. They do a better job at softening the water. They use less water and they use less salt, which is important for the efficiency of these things. The machine has a computer that keeps track of your water usage. Just based on your water usage will determine how often the machine cleans itself. If you're out of town and you don't use any water, it won't need to clean itself. If you got house guests in and you guys are using way more water, then it will clean itself more often than it normally would if it was just your family by themselves. So a couple things to take into consideration when you're looking for a system for your home is, one, what do I want to treat for the whole house? Do I want just a softener? And again, a softener has a 10-year warranty on it, let's say. Most of them do. And again, they're warranting kind of the tank. The tank is guaranteed for 10 years, but generally they're not guaranteeing the valve for 10 years. Those usually have a 5-year warranty. But the resin that's inside of there, this is the trick that nobody tells you. These resin beads break down in the presence of chlorine. So if we just put in a softener, we don't put a filter of some sort in front of it, what you'll find is after maybe 7 to 10 years on average, that resin will go bad and then you replace the softener. You can rebed it, but most people after 10 years, they'll say, well, it was never really, perfect water to begin with, and it was 10 years old. Maybe there's new technology, maybe there's something better. And that's really kind of where the life cycle of a softener is generally around 10 years people, replace these things if the resin goes bad. If the resin doesn't go bad, in some areas where there's very little chlorine, that resin could last 15 or more years. But again, it just depends on the quality of the resin that the manufacturer is using. But the manufacturer doesn't warranty typically resin. Whereas in a WaterMax, the beauty of the WaterMax is, again, we've got this design here where we're pre-filtering out all the chlorine and the chemicals. And in this case, the resin is actually guaranteed for 25 years under a manufacturer's warranty. So, there are better products on the market than softeners, like a WaterMax here, but there's not many products out there that are going to put a warranty like this on a product for a home. So today, whenever we've got something break in our home, if it's more than 10 years old, we're generally getting the, well, it's time to replace it. It's had its life, and everything just gets tossed in the trash. So we really like the Hague WaterMax with that 25-year manufacturer's warranty. These things don't just get tossed in the trash. They'll actually maintain their performance throughout their life. We have units that are currently out right now that are well over 25 years old. They still work great. We don't necessarily have to replace them because of all this proper pre-treatment. And anybody that looks at this product and has any history or knowledge of water treatment, they're usually, the first thing they say is, well, it's like a whole water treatment system inside this cabinet. And that's exactly what it is. It's a comprehensive water treatment system, not just a filter or a water softener. So if you're interested in a water system for your home and would like to have a conversation or a consultation, please reach out to us. Again, my name is Eric Ferrangi, Really Clean Water Technologies. Thank you for watching today, and have a great day.